The storm had swallowed New Orleans whole that night, thunder shaking the air as lightning carved cracks across the sky. Naomi Carter, a young black waitress closing down the Bayou Spoon restaurant, thought it would be just another shift, another long night cleaning tables while rain beat against the glass. But then the door slammed open and a man collapsed at her feet. His first words, barely audible over the roar of the storm, were chilling. "Please don't let them find me." He was soaked, bleeding, and nearly unconscious. Naomi froze for half a second, staring at the pale stranger with bruised hands and a gash dripping blood down his face. His designer shirt was ripped, his lips trembling with words she could not hear. Instinct cut through her fear. She pulled him inside, locked the doors, and covered him with a towel, whispering under her breath that this was not how her night was supposed to end. She searched his pockets for clues. No wallet, no phone, nothing but a strange metallic access card hidden in his sock. That was it. No name, no answers. Naomi stared down at the man lying on her floor and realized she was stepping into a chapter of her life she never saw coming. For a woman who had once been left behind, dismissed because of her skin, she would not leave this man to die alone. And that choice, quiet and instinctive, would rewrite everything. To understand Naomi's decision, you have to know her past. 3 years earlier, she had walked into a glass-walled conference room at Monroe Tech, heart pounding with hope. She was only 25, armed with a community college degree, a coding portfolio polished with months of late nights, and a determination that pulsed through her every word. But she felt the rejection before it ever came. The executive smiled politely, asked questions without really listening, and dismissed her vision before it had a chance to breathe. A week later, the email arrived. Not image aligned. 3 words that branded themselves into her memory. Later, she learned Ethan Monroe himself, the CEO, had flagged her profile, reducing her to a checklist she could never satisfy. It wasn't her skills, it was her hair, her drawl, her blackness. She didn't scream or cry. She went back to bussing tables at the Bayou Spoon, working double shifts, enduring sore feet while carrying herself with a kind of quiet grace. She had learned survival the hard way. That's why when she saw the stranger lying on her restaurant floor that stormy night, she didn't see Ethan Monroe, the man who had once overlooked her. She just saw a life in her hands, a man hanging by a thread. And without knowing it yet, fate had placed her and her old rejection face to face. By morning, the storm had passed, but the air was still thick with tension. Naomi sat at her kitchen table, sipping lukewarm coffee while keeping her eyes on the man resting on her couch. Wrapped in her grandmother's blanket, the same one that had comforted her through hurricanes and heartbreaks, he stirred slowly, groaning like someone lost in fevered dreams. When he opened his eyes, they met Naomi's steady gaze. "Where am I?" he asked, voice hoarse. "You're safe," she told him, handing him water. He drank, then looked at her with an expression that shifted from confusion to recognition to shame. Naomi froze. She knew that face. It was Ethan Monroe, the billionaire CEO who once dismissed her with a smile and a signature. The irony was bitter. The man who thought she didn't fit his company's image was now curled up in her living room, shivering beneath her grandmother's quilt. When she told him she knew who he was, he flinched. For a moment, the silence between them was louder than the storm had been. He admitted she was right, but before excuses could form, Naomi cut him off. She wanted answers, and slowly, painfully, Ethan began to tell her the truth. Ethan's story was darker than she imagined. He explained that at a private board dinner, he was preparing to expose a powerful investor named Colin Grant. Colin was funneling money through offshore accounts, signing dirty contracts, and using Monroe Tech to launder illegal deals. Ethan had gathered proof, emails, wire transfers, recordings, all hidden on a private server accessible only with the metallic card Naomi had found. But someone had tipped Colin off. Before Ethan could reach his car, men attacked him, one carrying a gun. Somehow he escaped into the storm, bleeding and desperate, and stumbled into Naomi's restaurant. His voice cracked when he admitted the truth. "If I hadn't run into you, I'd be dead." Naomi paced, trying to process. A billionaire with security and lawyers was now depending on her, a woman once told she didn't belong. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. She could have walked away, could have left him to his fate, but that wasn't who she was. "I should be mad at you," she said, her voice steady. "And I am, but I won't turn my back on you now." In that moment, Ethan Monroe, once untouchable, placed his survival in the hands of the woman he had once dismissed. By afternoon, Naomi knew they couldn't stay hidden in her apartment. Trouble was circling already. On her way back from the store, she spotted a black SUV idling nearby, tinted windows hiding eyes that kept scanning the street. She walked past calmly, but her heart raced. Back inside, she told Ethan they had to move. Her plan was bold: an abandoned church where her father had once preached, condemned after Katrina, but with a dry basement still intact. That night, under cover of darkness, Naomi led Ethan through back alleys and forgotten stairways until they reached the old church, its stained glass windows cracked but still catching the moonlight. Down in the basement, Ethan powered up his encrypted laptop and used the access card to open files. Together, they stared at undeniable proof: Colin Grant's network of corruption, the laundering, the stolen health records, the lies. Then Naomi saw something else: a file with her own name. Inside, an HR memo: "Candidate does not align with current brand image." It was the rejection she had lived with finally in writing. Ethan admitted he had signed off. The truth cut deep, but Naomi didn't cry. Instead, she closed the laptop. Now she held a weapon, and together they had a choice: run forever or fight back. Naomi chose to fight. She called Marcus Bell, a civil rights attorney who had never backed down from impossible cases. They met him at a diner where she slid him a flash drive of evidence. His face shifted from disbelief to anger as he read the files. "Lord have mercy," he muttered. "This isn't just corporate fraud, this is federal." He looked Naomi in the eye. "You ready for what comes next?" And without hesitation, she said, "I've been ready my whole life." Soon after, Naomi watched in horror as Colin Grant's PR team smeared her name in the media. They painted her as a manipulator, a waitress blackmailing a billionaire, spinning lies until headlines echoed with doubt. Naomi refused to be silenced. With Marcus's help, she went live on camera. Just Naomi, a webcam, and the truth. She told the world how Ethan had collapsed into her restaurant, how she uncovered the evidence, and even read aloud the HR memo that once branded her not image-aligned. Tens of thousands tuned in, then hundreds of thousands. Hashtags exploded: "Trust Naomi," "Black Truth Matters," "Waitress-turned-warrior." The world began to listen, and for the first time, Naomi Carter wasn't invisible. She was leading the fight. Everything came to a head in the Monroe Tech boardroom. Executives whispered nervously as Colin Grant strutted in, wearing confidence like armor. But then the doors opened, and Ethan Monroe walked in, alive and steady, laptop in hand. The room gasped. Ethan placed the computer on the table, telling the council, "Everything you need is here." Colin scoffed, calling it fabrications, but the doors opened again, this time with FBI agents and U.S. Marshals. Colin Grant was arrested on the spot for fraud, laundering, and obstruction. The boardroom sat in silence, the empire of lies collapsing in minutes. Later, at a press conference, Ethan stood before cameras, but Naomi stood right beside him, not behind, not hidden. Ethan told the world the truth, that Naomi had saved him, sheltered him, and reminded him what real leadership meant. The crowd erupted in applause. Redemption was his, but it was Naomi's victory too. The woman once dismissed as not fitting the image had just helped bring down one of the biggest frauds in corporate America. Weeks later, Naomi sat on a balcony overlooking the Mississippi River, the storm both outside and inside her finally quiet. Ethan joined her with iced tea and handed her a folder with her name engraved in gold. Inside were ownership papers, an entire hotel gifted to her. She was stunned, but Ethan told her she deserved it, a chance to lead, to own, to build something of her own. Naomi accepted, her life rewritten. A month later, she walked through the lobby of her hotel, where guests checked in under the soft glow of pendant lights and jazz filled the air. She remembered the storm, the soaked stranger, the choice she could have walked away from but didn't. And that memory reminded her, and now reminds us, that doing the right thing doesn't always feel heroic. Sometimes it feels heavy, lonely, risky, but it matters. She didn't save Ethan because of his power. She saved him because he was human. And that's the lesson. People may judge your looks, your past, or your voice, but your choices define your worth. And if Naomi's story moved something in you, even a little, don't just walk away. Share it, like it, subscribe, and remind the world that kindness still changes everything.